Let me introduce myself to you. I'm Simon of Cyrene. It's an ancient Jewish colony in the north of Africa. But I've immigrated to Palestine. But I want to confess something to you. I'm a very bitter, critical, hating human being. I hate, and I'm bitter, and I'm disgusted and disgruntled. Let me tell you what caused this. Maybe you can resonate with me. If you're a bitter person, you've got a big load to carry because you see your enemy. When you go to bed, you see him when you get up in the morning. Two of my sons, Rufus and Alexander, attended some of the beautiful messages given by a young rabbi from Nazareth called Jesus. And he was teaching something stupendous. He says when a Roman soldier asks you to carry his load, his pack or his sword or whatever, law says you've got to do it for at least 1 mile. And then this rabbi said to the audience, I want you not only to carry it 1 mile, but carry it for 2 miles. On the 2nd mile, the miracles start happening. My boys came home, they were bright and happy. I wasn't into religion too much, but I left them. And then one day I got a message from an eyewitness telling me what happened. Rufus was on the highway from Damascus that runs right through to the end of the country to a place called Ezion Geber. He went down Wadi Mujib. It's very steep, and then up on the other side. Now, if you've been to Jordan, you know exactly what I'm speaking about. So, when my lad was down at the bottom, a Roman soldier came across, and he said, what is your name? He said, Rufus. He said, I want you to carry my stuff for 1 mile. So with a smile, Rufus took it and he walked because he heard this rabbi speaking. Go the 2nd mile. So at the end of the 1st mile, he said, Captain, I'd love to carry it for a 2nd mile. And my 17-year-old Rufus carried that heavy weight for a 2nd time. But that was too much for the little lad. He collapsed at the end of the 2nd mile. Unbeknown to the next Roman soldier, my boy was exhausted. And he said to the lad, listen, the law says you've got to carry my stuff for 1 mile. My poor boy, exhausted, said, Captain, I've just carried another soldier's stuff for 2 miles. He thought my boy was lying, pretending he's tired. He says, I know you Jew boys. And he kicked him. He damaged his brain. And my boy died. Have you lost a child? Do you know what happens inside of you? Besides the pain, there's a bitterness that emerges that you cannot describe. Ambivalence. So my wife kind of blamed me for this, and we had arguments. So the priest from our synagogue came to counsel us. To make a long story short, like so many counselors and counselees, they fell in love. And one afternoon when I came home, she was gone. I hate synagogues. I hate priests. I hate Roman soldiers. I've got a chronic problem. I lost all my friends. She slandered about me. except for one old friend of mine, Simeon. He worked for Caiaphas in Jerusalem, and he invited me to come over there for Passover, and it was good to see him again. And I was just pouring out my bitterness. But while we sat there, there was a noise next door. 12 men shouting at each other, "Who's the most important?" And then another man stepped into the room, and Simeon says, "This is Jesus." And you know what he did? Instead of allowing a foreign slave to do the foot washing, he took off his upper clothes, outer garment, and he started to wash their feet. And you know, this impressed me. And then Simeon was called out to the palace of Caiaphas to assist in a court case. They've arrested Jesus just after midnight, and he was interrogated by the judges. 4 times they found him guilty. But while he was there, Simeon told me this. They've put a cloth over his face, and then they would hit him and say, "Prophesy, who hit you?" And then they took it off and they spat him in his face. Oh. Then he was put into the jail, the cell, which they usually do, where they lacerated him with 26 stripes, 13 on this side of his breast, 13 on the chest, on this side. He was a wreck. And then he briefly told me that he was taken to Pilate. Pilate found him not guilty, but to elicit the sympathy of the crowd who wanted to crucify him, he had him lacerated, 39 stripes, 40 less 1. And just before he was led to the cross, he received another 38. Calculate this, 204 stripes. It was just one piece of bleeding flesh. So I was walking back to my house when I came across this tumult. Roman soldiers shouting. One of them grabbed me. I wanted to kill him. I hate them. And he said, "You pick up this cross and you carry it." And then I looked at Jesus, who was lying on the ground. He couldn't get up straight. He lost such a lot of blood. Lacerated. And you know, I looked at the soldier and I looked at this criminal, but he wasn't a criminal. And he just looked at me, and in his weakness, he uttered the word, "Thank you." But my friend, I saw something in that face, a serenity, a purity, a dignity. And he was projecting forgiveness. So we carried, they carried, 2 Roman soldiers carried him. He couldn't walk. And I battled with this heavy cross to the top. Now the law said you have to carry your own cross. But he couldn't. They kicked him, they swore at him, they spat at him. He couldn't get up. So halfway up the hill of Calvary, 2 soldiers stopped. They were breathing, exhausted. And I was so glad for the little break. And then Jesus touched me. This was my second exposure to him. And again I saw in that face a love which I've never seen before. In that face I saw an acceptance. Me, the bitter man who wanted to kill his wife and Roman soldiers. No condemnation. He looked at me, and something happened inside of me. I still had this hatred for my wife who deserted me, who rejected me, for this Roman soldier. But next to it emerges a new profile of a man that I've never experienced before. I saw forgiveness, no condemnation. I saw a kind of love which I've never seen before. Just a gentle touch with a bleeding hand. And then we proceeded the last few steps to the top of Calvary. And my friend, something was happening inside of me. Just one look at his face started to change me. Eventually we reached the top. I laid down that heavy cross. And then I saw this rough soldiers putting and shuffling him in the position on the cross. Remember, his back was just one piece of blood, flesh, blood. Oh, I could see the pain. And then 2 nails in those hands. And every time a nail was hit in, I could see the pain, his body language, and then another, and then his feet. And then the soldiers picked up that cross. Oh, and they dropped it into the hole. And I saw the sweat on his brow because of the pain. And then the words which I will never forget. He looked up into the blue sky and he prayed a prayer. Father, destroy them? No. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they are doing. And I said to myself, Simon, you've never been treated like this. And I realized he's the Son of God. And after he prayed that prayer, he turned that bleeding head in my direction. He didn't say anything, but I got the message. To me, his body language said, Simon, if I could forgive them what they've done to me, who are you to hold grudges? And I left with a message. I will forgive. If he can forgive, he wants me to forgive. With tears in my eyes, I walked down towards the Jordan River, crossed it, and then I got onto the highway where my son was kicked to death. And when I got there was a Roman soldier. You know, the previous day I would have killed him. And he said, you've got to carry my baggage for a mile. And I said, yes, I will. At the end of that first journey, the first leg, the first mile, I said, do you mind if I carried another mile? And he looked at me and he said, how's that? You only have to carry it 1 mile. And then I told him the story of Jesus. I told him how he looked at me with such love, with such acceptance. And while he was doing this, something happened to my bitterness. And I said to the soldier, you know, I wanted to kill the man who killed my boy, but it's gone. I'm free. I'm happy. This was at the place where my boy was kicked to death, where we had our last conversation on the end of the 2nd mile. And then this cruel Roman soldier, after I told him the story of Jesus, just broke down and wept. He said, I killed your boy. He shook. I took him in my arms. I said, you're forgiven. And I remember what Jesus did in the upper room. Washed the feet of Judas, his betrayer. So I bent down and I washed his feet. And I said, God, may this feet eventually walk on streets of gold. And then he did the same. Washed my feet and said, thank you. Thank you for the gift of forgiveness. My dear friend, I know you hate someone. I know you're bitter and you've got a reason to be like that. But when I survey the wondrous cross on which the Prince of Glory died, my riches gain I count but loss, and pour contempt on all my sin. Please, my bitter friend, go to Calvary and listen to the music, the sweetest music of the universe. Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they're doing. And may the look in the eyes of Christ enable you to forgive the one who offended you. The greatest gift you can give is to go to your enemy and say, my friend, I forgive you. Amen. Thank you for watching this presentation. To subscribe to our channel, click here, then click the bell to get notifications. For the next presentation, click here. See you next time.